There's two categories of funding that we're talking about. We're talking about temporary, which is in the form of bonds, and then also permanent revenue sources. And a permanent revenue source would be something that we would attach to in the form of a tax that's ongoing or a fee that's ongoing. And the reason that we might want to consider that versus the bond is that the bond has to go, the affordable housing issues are not going to go away anytime in the next 20, 30, 40 years, is my guess, or 50 or 100. So if that's the case, then we're talking about other types of projects or initiatives. But I think that we have to...
Such as a parcel tax, sales tax, transient.
Right, I mean, a
tax.
tax on like rental cars, we've talked about
Rental
various
cars.
types of things, right, that people have been willing to consider.
Parking spots.
Parking spots, the marijuana tax, because we talked about the fact that that's now passed and is legal in the state. Short-term rentals, Airbnb, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
I mean, we might be able to utilize.
And the advantage of a permanent revenue source is that you can also bond. So in other words, it can also solve the problem short term, like you can bond up to a third of it without really impacting the continuous ongoing revenue flow that can support things like services, and as the need grows, you keep piling that money on top of what you already have bonded.
Exactly.
Yeah, but clearly part of what determines how many of those we need to try to get the city to adopt depends on our findings of what is the size of the problem that
Right.
we're going to try to solve on an annual basis. What number of homes
Right.
are we going to try to produce?
Yes, and I think that's a big problem for us, look, just in terms of regional issues, is the fact that we lack metrics.
Yeah, we
Very
do.
basic metrics, and so part of anything we build in terms of initiative should have strong indicators written into it that allow and require us to make sure that we're following the data and utilizing that data to inform our decisions.
Right. Quantify what our needs are, for example, in solving the housing, the homeless population, even by subcategories, like we talked
Yep.
about, veterans, seniors.
Millennials, I mean.
Well, in terms of the homeless population,
Of course,
the single moms, the
Family
parents,
housing.
families, and make sure that we address, and mentally ill, make sure we match the kind of population with the revenue source that comes in. For example, the mental health money that can be used to target it towards the mentally ill population. The veterans money comes in for the veterans population. So it's an overall comprehensive approach. It's not just, and every single indicator we do, it must be matched with a commitment, regional commitment as well as city and a political commitment that we will get there.
And that's part of the strategy we've got to work out. What combination of targets is going to attract the largest possible vote? So that when we get seniors, when we get vets, when we get the millennials, when we get new refugees, are we increasing the number of folks who are going to vote to support that package of
Right,
taxes?
because if it doesn't pass, nothing is not. It
Nothing,
doesn't
it's
matter.
not going to do us
Right,
anything.
yes.
We can't get there without it.
Agreed.
Yes, we need a critical mass. And at present, there is critical awareness and there is a willingness to act, but we don't have a critical mass in terms of leadership that can actually deliver what we actually need. So here is the problem in terms of county leadership. We do get a lot of revenue sources that are related to housing, but may not be
And the homeless, by the way.
and homeless that are not related to what they consider to be their core mission. And I'm specifically talking about two regional entities, the County of San Diego and San Diego Association of Governments. The County of San Diego receives mental health money, the veterans housing money, social service money, supportive housing money, and they are stacking all this up, and I'm not sure if they're using it in a way that can actually determine the results that we need to achieve as a county in terms of the needs that we have that are unmet, specifically with regard to the unsheltered homeless population in downtown. So that's one area. The second is the San Diego Association of Governments, which is sitting on the regional sales tax and every single transportation dollar that flows into the region from state and federal sources. However, its focus is only on transportation, and if it's focused on transportation, that's fine. But housing and transportation are related. They're related because where you live and where you commute to work are directly impacted in terms of getting from home to work. So unless we address the two sides of the equation and tie the two together, regionally we're talking about a sustainable community strategy that can move the region forward. And unless we tie the two together, we will not be able to hold cities and communities accountable for what they got to do in terms of their responsibility to the housing and the homeless. In terms of a bond, and especially with regard to either a parcel tax or some kind of a property tax, the question really is, there's two questions. One is the pragmatic financial question of how much money you can raise through that tax, and the second is a political question of whether or not that bond can pass at the level at which we're proposing and the jurisdiction that we are proposing in. So that's the reason why that there's a trade-off between the city versus the county, taking into account both the value of the properties as well as the demographics of the voting population. So based on that, we got to actually think a little bit long term. The city of San Diego probably is more ready than the county is in terms of actually doing something in terms of taxing themselves in order to address this. But I don't think that anybody would disagree with me that addressing the homelessness is a critical need in this region. It is not just critical, but it really concerns every single one of us. It's almost like a moral obligation that we need to be able to do something. If that means paying, opening up your wallet, might as well do it so that we take care of the homeless once and for all, with addressing the basic needs, which is the right to a shelter, right to a roof. Without that, everything else is a house of cards. It falls down. So we can't keep pouring good money out of bad because we don't have the basic foundation for these people to get off the street.
When we're looking at the decision about city versus county, it's really about often, especially if it's a ballot initiative, the electorate, right? And about who's willing to actually vote for something like this. And frankly, the part of the equation that goes into it, part of the algebra is going to be about the party demographics and registration. So, Democrats are more likely to vote for this sort of bond or initiative. Republicans are less likely to. And it's not because Republicans don't care about the homeless. It's partially because, from what my Republican friends tell me, that they believe that that people should contribute to these things, but they should do it independently and not be forced to do it by the government, right? That kind of thing. Whereas this is a way for the Democrats believe this is a way for us to systemically address it together and kind of just go at it. But when we're talking about those dynamics, then we're talking that in the city we have a much higher registration of Democrats than we do countywide. Countywide, we do have there is a majority Democrat registration in terms of the county population, but there's still a lot more Republicans countywide than there are citywide. And it's a weird tension, right? Because the county gets so much of this money. They get so much of this funding and they're sitting on it. There's a huge reserve, a huge cash reserve at the county level that doesn't exist at the city level. The city pretty much expends all the money that comes in and they send it back out. But the county likes to take the money in and then sit on it. They don't want to, and they're very conservative when it comes to those sorts of fiscal decisions. So it means that, at the end of the day, do we run a citywide initiative, ballot initiative, or a countywide ballot initiative? And most people would say, especially in an off-year election, in a 2018, let's say it's going to go on the 2018 ballot, it might be better to go city because you've got more Democrats likely to vote for it. However, the challenge there being, of course, that Democrats are less likely to vote in a non-presidential election year. So there's that piece too. So, but more and more it seems to us that maybe a city-wide initiative would be a good place to start before we tackle the county.
What are the logistics for getting a ballot proposition on the ballot? Like, who does that? Who initiates that? Who writes it?
There's a couple of different ways that initiatives get put on the ballot. One is by an elected body, right? So the city council, for instance, could decide to put a ballot initiative on the ballot that addresses the affordable housing issues. The county board of supervisors could decide to put that on the ballot. The other way, though, is through a citizens initiative, which means that people like us go out and we collect signatures. We do a petition, right? And we collect the signatures and we submit those to the registrar of voters and we put it on the ballot ourselves. So one of the reasons that we're here, even talking about this together, is that we're a group of stakeholders and we believe that there are more folks out there that are going to be interested in participating. We're a group of stakeholders who are actually willing to put our boots on the ground to collect the ink that we need to get this thing on the ballot if that's the necessary requirement. We might be able to convince an elected body to do it, but then we have less control as well over what's in the initiative, right? Because they get to decide what goes into it at that point. We don't. We get to encourage them to consider our ideas and take our ideas, but whether or not they will is the problem.
And I would think the city would probably be the place to do it because that's where the biggest homeless problem is. And the county probably wouldn't be as easy to do that because they don't have the problem that we have. There was a city councilman from Santee, and I guess they were telling him that he had to build a shelter in his city. He was saying, we don't have a homeless problem. Why do we have to build a shelter? That seems like a waste of money because, they don't have the homeless problem that downtown San Diego has. So
Right.
the bond would probably be better down there because people are faced with the problems that homeless bring.
But I would say that, while in El Cajon, not in El Cajon,
Santee.
in Santee, right? In parts of East County and parts of North County, there's fewer homeless issues. There's definitely been an increase of homelessness across the region.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I remember walking during this past 2016 election cycle, I was knocking doors for various issues and candidates. And I was walking in Chula Vista and I was walking in National City, and in both of those places, when I talked to voters at the door and I asked them what are the concerns that you have about your community, almost everyone talked about homelessness, about the rise of homelessness in those places. When up in Mira Mesa and in Claremont, there's a lot of concerns about the homeless living in the canyons, and
So you're thinking that there may be the people across the county may be more and more concerned about this, and that a countywide bond could have some legs.
Yes, I think people are more and more aware of the fact that homelessness is an issue that's affecting folks outside of downtown.
It's true.
In response to whether this is a city problem or a county problem. And I believe that it is both their problems. The county, especially the city's problems, are a subset of the county's problems. And I'll say primarily the city's responsibilities over land use. But as far as mental health services, veteran services, homeless services goes, the dollars that are received for population within the city are actually received by the county, which is sitting on the money and not doing much for the homeless population. For example, the downtown population is supposed to be serviced by the County of San Diego. So yes, the city does have land use jurisdiction as well as the Housing Commission for those segments that are served by Section 8. However, the rest is all the county's problem, and the county could today build housing to house those homeless that are even within the city boundaries, as well as service them. And that service dollars can be used to be able to build more housing too. So the county does not get away out of this by saying it's the city's problem so easily. And also the most important thing here is that the county itself as a regional provider can actually convene all the different players in the region. So they don't get to say, hey, this is not our problem and this is the city's problem, because the county of San Diego is supposed to be the primary social service provider in this region. So in the end, the homeless issue has come to this point where it has, in which we are increasing as a region in terms of our unsheltered population because of lack of leadership. And the county of San Diego has for way too long now, for example, done its part in terms of contributing, for example, redevelopment dollars to actually solving the homeless and the housing issues that we have. So they have sit on the back burner, they have kept it as a lower priority, and that has not done this region enough well. So that's the reason why the city of San Diego is trying to take leadership, but that does not absolve the county of its responsibility in doing its fair part. So anyway, that's kind of like a long-winded answer. The city of San Diego's primary jurisdiction is land use enforcement, policing, police safety, that kind of jurisdiction. It is not actual provision, for example, for the veterans, the veterans vouchers. All that stuff happens, and to the extent that even the Housing Commission has a role to do development and projects, the county of San Diego too has an overlapping jurisdiction from the Housing Commission's jurisdiction to be able to, for example, bond on housing projects. So technically the county has as much roles as well as responsibility as the city has, even over housing bonds.
It's really frustrating, actually. This tension that he's talking about between the county and the cities, because it's not just the city, right? It's the cities, and it's and San Diego, the city of San Diego bears the brunt of the crisis in terms of homelessness. But like I said, the cities in the South Bay are definitely suffering and struggling with this, and I think we're going to see more and more cities north of the 8 and in the East County also seeing some of these issues arise. And as Ramla was talking about earlier, we're seeing it manifesting through other avenues as well, such as the refugee populations and others. So there's a lot of need, and the county really does have an opportunity to step up, and they're just not.